Welcome to Paul versus Destin. Normally, it's just Paul and I, but this time Jeff Grubb is joining us. Jeff, thank you so much for joining the show this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to join you guys.
No problem. This week, we're going to be discussing some topics that have already come and gone about the Xbox and the PlayStation consoles, and just ask Jeff about his history in the industry. So let's talk about that to the death. That's right. Well, let's get right into it. I think the big news of the week was that the Xbox outsold the PlayStation 5 in June. So the PlayStation 5 has been selling like crazy. Like, nobody denies that. But I don't think it's any small feat to see that Xbox did manage to outsell the PlayStation 5. Both of these console manufacturers are just making these consoles as fast as they can, and they just seem to be selling out like crazy. So let's go to our guests first. Jeff, what do you think about this news? And just for fun, do you think Xbox and Sony are going to end up evening out by the end of the console generation?
Probably not. I think this is more an indication that there were more Xboxes available this month. I think Microsoft made a strategic decision to kind of hold back and try to have enough stuff. So after E3, they could really hit people with a big wave of consoles. And that's what happened that week after E3. I remember getting some messages from some GameStop employees to say, hey, we're going to have a ton of Xboxes on Wednesday or something like that. And they got a lot of supply into the channel. And that is what we're seeing reflected here, that there is more. There were more Xboxes available than PlayStation 5s that month, so more Xboxes sold. They're both, like you said, they're both selling as many as they can make. So if one of them happens to have more than the other, then this is what we're going to end up seeing, is that one outsells the other. I think what happened early on is, PlayStation 5 is in a lot of demand, but PlayStation 5 is in a few fewer territories and fewer regions than Microsoft. So I think Microsoft was spread a little bit more thin. Also, Microsoft started producing Xbox Series X and S consoles a few months after Sony started producing PlayStation 5 consoles. So there was a bit of a lead that PlayStation had there as well. So again, any month where one of these consoles has more supply in the United States, which is where this data comes from, we will see something like this continue to happen for quite some time. Probably well into next year before we get to a point where either of these systems are just easy to go in the store and people are stopped freaking out every time they're available to purchase. But in terms of like long term, probably not. Like, the PlayStation 5 is going to continue to have a lead over the Xbox for probably most of this generation, and it'll probably be pretty sizable. I don't think it's going to be fully 2-to-1, and a lot of that's just going to come down to like how strong games like Halo hit and whether or not they really get that audience excited to pick up an Xbox sooner rather than later.
Do you think part of the reason for the large amount of console sales is because there are two SKUs on the Xbox platform, one being the S and one being the X, whereas PlayStation has the disc version and the digital version? Do you think that affects it at all because it's like cheaper?
I think there's something there. This last couple of weeks, I think I've noticed more and more people picking up an Xbox Series S than ever. I don't know if it was making a huge difference up until like E3, but I think at E3 when people started saying, hey, I do want an Xbox as well, like I don't want to miss out on this stuff, and there is this cheaper option. So yeah, I spent most of my budget on a PlayStation 5, but now that like I go to the store and I actually do occasionally see an Xbox Series S there, or I can go online and have a better luck buying that, I think I might just do that, and I'll use that to play games. I think that's starting to happen now. I don't think that was making a huge difference up until about E3, but I think going forward, I think we're going to see Series S is helping out with that a little bit more.
Paul, what's your take on the whole thing? So Xbox outsold PS5's June specifically. We don't have numbers for July yet because it's July right now, obviously. Why do you think this is? Will Xbox and Sony sales even out in like 5 years or whatever? Or will Sony stay ahead like Jeff said?
Yeah, it's interesting because it is, like Jeff said, essentially just a supply issue. And yet the timing of this is something that they can use as a marketing push, because the narrative that came out after this was like, oh, they had such a great E3 show and all these, they debuted all these great Xbox games and everyone got so excited about Xbox. They just ran out and bought all the Xboxes, and that's why they're beating Sony. And like, I don't like that might be true in part. I think they did have a good showing and they did get a lot of people excited about Xbox. But I think, like Jeff said, they planned out to have a big surge right after E3 so they could do that. So it was kind of very clever on their part to kind of arrange things that way. So, the narrative going forward is not going to be from them like, oh, yeah, we just are good at making consoles and we stack them in this month. It's Xbox has all these great games coming up. Like, can't you see how excited everyone is? And like, it works. It like that narrative has kind of taken hold, whether or not it is literally just kind of a supply issue. I also agree that for the longer term, I think it is going to be hard for Xbox to fully match PlayStation. I just don't think we're on really the track for that. Pulling like even with them once the whole production thing goes away seems lofty, but it does seem pretty clear that Xbox is going to have a much better generation than the Xbox One generation. And also, it's not really just like Microsoft says this all the time, but they're right. Like, it's not just about console sales anymore, because we can talk about console sales all day long, but then, what is the lifetime generational Game Pass revenue going to be compared to Sony and things like that? So it's kind of a broader picture now where, yeah, they are going to lose in console sales probably, but the way Game Pass and I guess on PlayStation side, whatever they end up doing for PS Now or whatever, to see how that evolves over the next few years too. So I think they're not going to match box sales, but they don't really care. Like, they kind of stopped caring when they stopped reporting box sales like years ago. So I think it's going to be a better generation for them, certainly.
So, I mean, you kind of touch on an interesting point. You brought up the fact that Game Pass, Project X Cloud, and things are sort of more their play, where they're talking about getting Game Pass on televisions, or at least that's the rumor that's been going around. And then there was this whole Netflix thing that happened with Sony, where an image of Ghost of Tsushima was leaked and Endgame was potentially a thing. Do you think that is actually their strategy, and they're just not even worried about console sales as much, and they're just looking to offer other avenues of access for the Xbox platform?
I mean, I think they would like more console sales, and like that's certainly something they're aiming for, and that's why they designed, the Series X to be as powerful it is. That's why they split the SKUs, because they wanted to give people more options. So like, they can say that they don't care or whatever, and like they do care to a certain extent, but I also think that they are leaning hard into kind of the overall distribution platform where they just want to get Game Pass on literally anything that can run Game Pass, essentially, and that will leave Sony kind of boxed into this very small space if they don't expand in a similar way, which it does not seem like they are going to do that anytime soon. Obviously, that is not hurting them in terms of PlayStation revenue and stuff, but this is kind of the longer play of like, this is, I think, where Microsoft sees gaming going in the future is more that path.
Jeff, how do you feel about all that? Do you think the long-term play is for Xbox to get in TVs and on PCs, and that's how they make their money?
I think that's not even a question anymore. It's the obvious, repeatedly stated goal of the company to say, hey, we're a services company. I think that Paul's right when he says like they still care about hardware to a certain extent. I think like hardware serves the purpose of getting Game Pass to people. Right now, Game Pass is very much something that you access through hardware. And if you're not someone that has a PC, the hardware is going to be an Xbox, almost certainly for now. They are trying to get in TVs and all this stuff, but even on TVs, you're still going to have to convince someone to buy a video game controller, and that's a kind of a headache in and of itself. Like, that's going to be a challenge. But with the Xbox, you have an audience that understands it. People are very into gaming right now. People are very into hardware. They like gadgets. People spend a lot of money on this stuff over the last year, and historically they have done so. So they're going to continue caring about hardware a whole bunch, again, because it serves that purpose. But the final purpose is to get Game Pass as the thing that you think about, that is the platform you're subscribing to. That is the platform that you engage with. That is the platform for Xbox. Absolutely.
Well, what about Sony's strategy here? Because there's this Netflix rumor that they're partnering, and honestly, I think that would be genius. So Microsoft just has the capital to throw money at anything. Sony partnering with somebody like Netflix to at least put their best games on the service, I think would be incredible for everybody, really. Do you think that's possible? Netflix came out today and did say they are supporting indie games to start out. I don't think they mentioned anything about PlayStation, or I missed it this morning. But what's your thought about that, Jeff? And then Paul.
Yeah, this is the real long-term thinking, but it's all based on the data that Netflix gets, and they look at the data of hey, there's a lot of telemetry of people kind of coming in from consoles watching this Witcher show, and then we see them like leave the app, and when we talk to Sony or we talk to Microsoft, they say, yeah, people are going from your app to go play The Witcher, and this happened a whole bunch when that show came out. That's pretty wild, huh? And Netflix is saying, okay, so we need to think about those people and how to keep them flowing in our ecosystem. And I think while they are starting with mobile gaming now, yes, this is them dipping a toe in, but the long-term play is for them to say, as we put out content that people engage with it like as a video, when they go to the next thing because they're inspired by that video and they want to consume more of it, maybe we should have a video game to go along with it. And I think honestly, when it comes to Sony, I think the play there is Sony wants to be making more movie and show-based content based on their stuff, and Netflix would be a great home for that. And if Netflix wants to make a partnership where now the games are there as well and everybody's sort of benefiting, I think this is like a long-term thing, a thing that's probably in a nascent state right now. It might not ever actually come to be, but I think that is like what Netflix is eyeing right now. And I think, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, especially for Netflix, who understands this data, understands this behavior really well.
Paul, what do you think about all that?
I don't. Maybe Jeff has more inside information than I do. I just, from what I saw based on this whole thing, I think the Sony thing with Netflix is nothing. at least right now. Like the images they showed. Well, they said they were placeholders, which fine. You don't have to believe PR, which I rarely do these days. But one of them was literally like you search for like. It was like a iStock photo, like video game controller thing, and it was just like kind of an airbrushed PS5 controller. And then the other thing is Ghost of Tsushima, which, if I'm interpreting that as anything, like maybe Netflix is going to buy the rights to the Ghost of Tsushima movie or something. Mm-hmm. I think like when we say nascent, we're talking like really, really, really early stages in terms of a longer term play into gaming. And like as we've seen from Google and Amazon, like the biggest companies on earth that have unlimited funds and unlimited streaming capabilities and whatever, even they can't get it together for like a coherent kind of game offering. So, and then like talking about Sony specifically, I don't really know if I can see them doing that. Like, I don't know how much that would benefit them. Like Sony is like just starting to come around to like, maybe we should put more games on PC. I think licensing a bunch of stuff to Netflix, unless they are paid just an absurd amount of money, like that seems like they're skipping a step almost. Like if they're gonna have games that are available like as part of a subscription, like they should be putting more games into PS Now to compete with Game Pass. Like I don't know. I'm not sure I see a Netflix deal like overlooking the whole technical hurdles of it. Like, well, maybe there's like could be a win-win there. That to me seems like it would be kind of a stretch for Sony. And the Netflix thing right now, I think is just literally going to be mobile games. Like they're going to do that for at least a couple of years. Like they've already had some kind of like the lo-fi Stranger Things game, things like that. But as I think we all know, like it takes a ton of work to make consistent, high-quality video games, and then also a ton of work to have a game streaming service, which are entirely separate things. So I'm not sure how much faith I have in this effort kind of yielding anything within the next couple of years here. And like, if we're talking like a decade from now, like maybe they'll figure it out. But I do not expect a whole lot from Netflix on the gaming front for a while. Like I get why they're doing it, like Jeff said, but I'm not exactly sure what kind of impact this is going to make per se.
Well, I think you sort of alluded to it, but one of the things I was thinking about after reading this story yesterday was maybe this is just shows, because they have The Witcher. The Witcher's been probably really successful for them. There's the Uncharted movie coming around the bend. I don't know. Is that going to HBO or is that Netflix? I don't remember. But then if it's a Ghost Image, maybe it's just gaming related things, because Netflix does have Castlevania and just Resident Evil, I believe, came to Netflix recently. So they're doing all these gaming related things. Maybe Ghosts is the next thing that they're going to try, and then that's the brand end game, their gaming related content. Jeff, do you think that's a crazy idea?
No, I definitely think they see a lot of value in gaming IPs in terms of just building out the Netflix like stable of properties in terms of what people come to Netflix for. They did. The Witcher was a big success. The Castlevania seems like something that they are really invested in. They're doing more Castlevania stuff. And I just think that there's a chance that when it comes to gaming, they just want to see it more. They want to find more ways to capture that audience and make sure that audience stays in Netflix and is happy subscribing to Netflix. And when you say, oh, I'm going to sign up to watch this, the show based on a game, maybe there is some gaming related stuff that you actually do play on Netflix. I think that'll be like the end goal here. And again, and I agree with Paul, though. The chances of them actually like executing on this I think are slim. And we'll see if anyone actually ends up liking it.
I'm trying to picture a situation where someone just finishes The Witcher who has like never played the game, and then someone's like, "Hey, how about you try The Witcher 3?" And then like them starting it, being like, "What the hell do I do?" I feel like the leap from TV to games is like pretty wide for someone who is not into that. Like,
sure, yeah, but that did happen though. There was like a lot of people who watched the Netflix show, and then it had its best year ever or whatever. And the games in terms of sales, like people got excited about it and went to go play the game. I do imagine Netflix thinking, hey, that person who's watching the show is just going to go play the game. But the people going through all those steps to do that are people that fully understand games. And I think Netflix might be imagining an even bigger audience that would do that if they didn't have to go through all those steps. I don't know if you're right. That person's probably not going to be like, oh, okay, I have to pick up a different remote control. Oh, no, it's a video game controller. Okay, how do I do this? Yeah, you're probably right about that.
There were two other pretty big stories this week. I want to touch on the Nintendo OLED and get your reaction to that reveal and what that console is versus Valve's Steam Deck. So to me, my take was that Nintendo lost a huge opportunity to launch a new console. Valve saw an opportunity and provided that to the gaming community, basically. And I'm really excited about the Steam Deck, not Stream Deck, Steam Deck. And I feel like the Nintendo OLED is a pretty big miss, especially during a time when most of us are indoors, not necessarily commuting, at least. That's definitely one market. But Jeff, you have kids, so sometimes you want to go in the other room and just play on a nicer screen. So Paul, let's start with you. What was your reaction to the OLED and the idea that Nintendo lost an opportunity to create something new here? I say that fully knowing that both of these things are sold out.
That's the thing. It's like Nintendo can do anything and it'll sell out. Like they could have just changed the colors and it'd still be selling out. So, I mean, my initial reaction was just sort of confusion. My initial thought from this was like, okay, they didn't do the chip thing that was reported. There's a chip shortage. Like maybe that played into the decision making of like they wouldn't be able to even do enough stuff anyway. Or maybe they decided to push the model. What confused me the most, though, is the follow-up kind of statements Nintendo made about the reporting about this, like pretty much based on the couple different Bloomberg reports, where they said, first and foremost, like, no, we're not making another Switch model past this. So, like, or we have no plans to, or whatever they're, maybe that they're just, like, kind of twisting their words around, so they're not committing to anything. But I think the purpose there was like, no, we're not going to have one with a better chip in it in a year from now, so definitely buy the OLED right now. And then the second thing was like the report where they kind of just added up all the parts, like the new memory and the screen and stuff, and it's like, this is going to cost $10 more and the console costs $50 more. And then Nintendo was like, there is no increase in profit margin. And I'm like, okay, well, even if the $10 is wrong and it's $20 or $30, you're telling me there was no increase in profit margin on a OLED Switch? Like, it costs a full $50 to put all that stuff in, and your profit margin is the same? Like, that is verbatim what they said, and like, I still can't really wrap my head around that. I just can't imagine that's true. So their clarifications confuse me even more than kind of the initial reveal, and like, I personally don't like it. I think it's not really the best use of going out and buying new hardware, and I'm not sure what the target audience for this is, other than like diehard Nintendo people who will buy every new thing they make anyway. And I think it would have been, we're two generations behind now in terms of power almost, without any upgrades, and like in certain titles in certain instances, like it is really starting to show its age. So I think this seemed like the right time for some sort of performance increase. Like, no one's expecting PS5 level whatever, but this seemed like a good moment for that, and we don't have that. So we have an OLED screen that is the same resolution, and that's really it. So not great, if you ask me.
All right. So you're excited about Valve's hardware?
Oh yeah, no, that was a good idea. So like I used to make fun of Steam machines all the time because I didn't understand the use case for Steam machines really at all. But the Steam Switch or whatever, the Steam Deck, you can very clearly see the use case for that, and you can see everyone excited about it. And my timeline was just full of people trying to get their hands on a copy. Like granted, I found a lot of gaming people, but like those people were not running out to buy either the Switch OLED or Steam machines back in the day. But like everyone, a lot of people seem to really kind of be into this idea, like how it works in practice, how much use it'll get. I guess we'll see. But that seems like a more clear win and a good idea past kind of Steam machines or their really expensive VR systems and all the other hardware they've done so far, I'd say.
Jeff, what's your thought on the Nintendo OLED system versus the Valve Steam Deck?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the Switch OLED first, it's I bought it. I'm not necessarily like super excited about it, but I'm like, no, it was time for me to get new hardware. And yeah, I would have preferred a Switch Pro, but I'm happier with just a bigger screen that is going to look better for sure. That's fine with me. But I get that most people were just like, this is not for me. Although we say that, and I've looked at like 5 or 6 different polls of people say, hey, are you going to buy this? And the number's always like between like 15 and 25% of people saying, I already have a Switch. I'm going to get this one. And it's like, if those numbers like bear out at all, there's going to be, 10, 20 million people who already own a Switch buying another one. That's a huge number. That's a lot of people. And that's people buying a second Switch. So their old Switch is going to go into the secondhand market and create even more Nintendo Switch users. And that's really like, we talk like, who is this for? It's for Nintendo. That's what this system is for. It enables them to do that boost to the secondhand market where, yeah, the diehard Nintendo fans that buy every Nintendo Switch that comes out, or not every Nintendo thing that comes out, they're going to buy this, and then they're going to fuel that secondhand market. That works out in Nintendo's favor because more people are buying games. And then also, it's a price increase. Like, they figured out a way to increase the price 3 or 4 years after a console came out. That's never happened before. So it's like this really clever trick of being like, I mean, I guess as with the Pro models, this is not a Pro model though. This is just the same thing getting a price increase because they know demand is so high they can get away with it. And all they had to do was just change a few things, create the forced obsolescence and take advantage of that market force, and bang, what do we have? We got a price increase. That's what this thing is.
They're not making any more money from it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. That whole thing, I just don't believe them. But I think right now, this year, they're going to count tooling up and having to start new manufacturing lines and stuff like that against the profits of this thing. And they don't want to, and when they're talking to investors, which is what they said in that tweet, we're talking to investors, that investors stuff is always we're going to be very conservative with our estimates, and we're never going to promise huge profit margins, because then we have to follow through and answer the questions about that. And if we beat our profit margins, it's all good news. I expect them to beat their profit margins this year, but by next year, when the tooling stuff is mostly off their books, it's going to be a pretty big increase. So whatever, we'll see when it comes to that. But compared to the Steam Deck, I think the Steam Deck is very exciting for people who have big Steam libraries already, and that's a lot of people. So and I definitely I reserved one. I'm very, very excited for it. I'm going to play. I can't wait to have that thing. But there is going to be a long trek for Valve to try to carve out what is going to be essentially a new market of handheld gaming PCs. We've seen a few of these devices so far. They've been very expensive. We've seen the handheld gaming console market, has been around for forever. Nintendo has really sort of solidified and crystallized that. But this is going to be a new space for handheld gaming PCs. And I do think it's going to turn into something pretty big. It's going to be kind of stand alongside desktops, laptops, and then handheld gaming PCs. And I think Valve sees an opportunity to say, hey, we can price this thing really aggressively and step out front and make, the Steam Deck is going to be the first and foremost thing that people get, but Steam OS, make that what people really use on handheld gaming PCs, and we can just dominate this space. And when it comes to that, it's okay, yeah, I'm here to see what Valve's going to do with that. As for whether or not they're competing, they're definitely competing a little bit, but Valve is going to try to find out its own market here, and I think it probably will succeed to some degree.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I really like it also. I thought the OLED was sort of weird, but I ended up picking up both, largely because I'll likely end up filming B-roll of both of them, but I'm pretty interested in the Steam Deck, honestly. The final thing I wanted to sort of talk about is, Jeff, you've largely blown up name wise, your household name now, because you said Starfield will be Xbox exclusive. I think that was the first big thing. And then you were pretty close on the date also, right? Like you said spring and ended up being fall or something. Is that right?
I said 2022, and that's all I said. It was sort of interpreted as spring, and I never meant that to be interpreted that way. But the only date I ever said was 2022. So yeah, but it was. I think it's one of those things where it's like an overnight success that took 10 years to happen. I've been doing this job for a long time, and I've had reports kind of similar to those for a very long time as well. But in the last year, I think the big thing that really actually started like getting the ball rolling for me was a Nintendo Direct in March, the Nintendo Direct Mini in March 2020. And Nintendo didn't announce it the day before, and yet I'd said it was going to be happening, and I was like getting really worried because Nintendo usually announces Directs the day before, and I'm like, you know what, it's definitely still going to happen, and it sort of like went ride or die on it, and it ended up happening, which it would have been wild if it didn't based on what I knew, but people were like, oh wow, this is exciting, like you said it was going to happen, and it really did, and then after that it was just like a good summer of like the E3 stuff blew up and was like spread over the entire summer and helping people keep track of that stuff and understanding when to care about things and when news was going to happen. People really appreciated that stuff, and I have fun doing it too. So it's something I really enjoyed, like kind of making that my thing, and it worked out. Ended up really working out. But yeah, Starfield kind of took it to another level for sure. Yeah, it was weird because I didn't expect that. You don't expect any of this stuff. Like you can't plan any of these things. Like saying Starfield's going to be Xbox exclusive, I felt like that was the most obvious thing in the world, but by then people were like, I don't know, they just wanted to make their headlines again, and it worked out for me, so I'm not going to complain.
We do love our headlines. So.
Yeah. You said you've been doing this 10 years. Have you always been at VentureBeat, or what did you do before that?
I've been at VentureBeat for a long time now, but that's closer to like 8 years. Before that, I started like writing blogs at like OneUp.com. I had a blog on there, and then when they started like imploding in 2008ish or whatever, I got some friends together and we started trying to do our own thing for a little bit. And then I went to a very small site that was like, there's like Kotaku and then Joystick in terms of blogs, Kotaku and Joystick, and then there was like 50 yards of crap, and then it was combo.com with a K, and we did it was fun. They paid me like $200 a month to like write 5 stories a day or something like that. It was a lot of work, and I don't know, but when that sort of like that also imploded, and I was about to give up, and then a buddy gave me a call and said, hey, we need someone to come volunteer at BitMob, which is something that was kind of like a blogging site for like the community, sort of like OneUp, and it was run by former EGM editor Dan Shu, and I got close with Shu, and he helped me out and sort of mentored me and took me up and under his wing and helped me get a job, and yeah, I've been doing it ever since. So yeah, it was a fun process, but a lot of luck and a lot of just like caring a lot about games that helped too.
Cool. Paul, I guess I've never actually asked you. What's your work history?
You don't have to ask me for fair and
No, I'm curious.
To be fair, I knew all about Jeff before Starfield, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, Jeff, what's the latest insane rumor that you want to reveal? Do you want to answer what that swirl thing is that Jez Corden's talking about, or?
The swirl thing was the Typhoon. The swirl thing was Typhoon. That was that got announced at Xbox thing. What was it? They gave it the real name, Contraband. So yeah, that swirl thing got revealed and was confirmed. Absolutely.
There's dragons in Contraband?
No, the dragon thing is something different. You know what? You asked me what rumor what is. I've never talked about this. I've been looking for an opportunity. I think Jez might be conflating two things because there is another sort of like MMO thing, kind of an MMO-ish thing in the works, and then there's the IO interactive thing, and they're like two separate projects. And he was like got him a bit mixed up because the way he was talking about him, I need to talk to him about this first. This is kind of unfair to me, but like, Jez,
sorry, Jez,
he's wrong. Yeah, sorry, Jez. But like, I think there's like multiple things there, and it was interesting to kind of see like him to like teasing that stuff out and be like, I think actually the IO Interactive thing is like this other big project that's kind of like similar, but mostly like a behind the back sort of Destiny style thing. And then this other project that is going to have also going to have dragons in it is this whole other sort of MMO experience. But there's not a lot else to say about those things right now because they're so far off. They're so early. But yeah, I think there might be two projects there where he was hearing about one.
Got it. Well, that's good to know. I'm always curious about these things.
Wow.
Yeah. So a dragon game, an MMO game, and Contraband.
Yep. And shrimp. And if you're wondering what the shrimp thing is, go ask Special Nick on Twitter.
Oh yeah,
So-
special. The first time I talked about him, I butchered his name. Then someone's like, "Dude, it's special." Yeah. I was like, "Oh, whoops."
Not your fault. He spells it weird.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thank you both for making some time today. I like to keep these fairly short and to the point, but as I said at the top of the show, this is to the death.
Finish him! Friendship.
Hey, thank you so much for watching, and thanks to Paul and Jeff for joining the show. I'm glad we're all friends now. We're best friends. If you like this sort of content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when it goes live. And if you want to become a member, memberships are turned on YouTube, so you can check that out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you for the next one, everybody. Bye for now.